From the Himalayas all the way down to the Central Plains, India's forests and grasslands they're the lifeblood for millions of people and for countless species. They handle our water, they store carbon, they anchor entire economies. But right now, these vital ecosystems are facing a test that is completely unprecedented, a challenge that's literally rewriting the rules of nature itself. And that right there is the central question we're diving into. When the very foundations of an ecosystem, I'm talking the rain, the heat, the seasons, when all of that is in flux, how on earth do you manage and protect it? The old rule books, they just don't apply anymore. For decades, our whole strategy for managing these incredible landscapes was built on one big assumption: stability. But that stability, it's gone. We're now dealing with a totally new reality where the old methods aren't just a little outdated, they're actually becoming dangerous. So think about it. The old command and control models, they were all about getting predictable outputs, right? Like a certain amount of timber or fodder. And that worked because we thought the climate was predictable. But today, with rainfall all over the place and temperatures soaring, that predictability has just vanished. The new goal isn't just about output anymore, it's about sheer survival and resilience. And here's the thing, climate change isn't acting in a vacuum. Nope, it's mixing with a whole host of existing problems, like habitat loss, invasive species, and overgrazing, to create what scientists are calling the anthropogenic cocktail. And it's this dangerous mix that magnifies every single threat, pushing these ecosystems right to their breaking point. Okay, so if the old way is broken, what's the new way? Well, it requires a huge shift in our thinking. We have to move away from this idea of trying to freeze ecosystems in some kind of perfect historical state. Instead, we have to start managing for a dynamic and, frankly, uncertain future. The very first strategy in this new toolbox is what we call resistance. Think of this as the emergency room approach. It's all about taking intense, short-term actions to defend something incredibly valuable, like building a fire break to protect the last remaining habitat of an endangered species, or maybe watering a secret grove during a killer drought. It's a holding action, plain and simple. So from the emergency room, we move to resilience, and this is really the heart of this new framework. This isn't about fighting change anymore. It's about helping the ecosystem roll with the punches. The goal here is to strengthen its own natural ability to bounce back from shocks, mainly by boosting biodiversity and dialing back all those other human pressures we just talked about. And finally, we have the response strategy, which is sometimes called transformation. Now, this is the most forward-looking and maybe the toughest approach. It's about accepting that sometimes you just can't go back. So instead of trying to restore a past that no longer fits the climate, you actively guide the ecosystem towards a new, different, but still healthy and functional state. So here's a quick breakdown of how they compare. Resistance is all about defending against change. Resilience about accommodating it. And response is about actively guiding that change. See how the actions are totally different depending on the goal? We go from putting up walls to actually helping species move to entirely new, more suitable homes. All right, so that's the theory, that's the big idea. But what does this actually look like in practice, out in the real world? Let's start with how we manage our forests, a field called silviculture. This is where these ideas really become reality. The old way of forestry was a lot like putting all your money into a single stock. You plant these huge areas with just one species, all the same age. It's incredibly risky. The new way, it's like having a diversified portfolio. By planting mixed species of multiple ages, you create this complex, resilient system where if one species gets hit by a pest or a drought, the whole forest doesn't just collapse. Now, this leads us to one of the most radical new ideas out there. We always thought local is best when it comes to seeds. But what if your local climate is about to become like the climate 100 kilometers to your south? This new strategy, called assisted gene flow, involves planting seedlings that are sourced from slightly warmer and drier areas to basically pre-adapt the forest for the climate of tomorrow. It's complex, it's debated for sure, but man, it shows how far the thinking has shifted. Okay, now let's talk about a force of nature we've spent about a century trying to completely eliminate: fire. In so many of India's ecosystems, fire isn't the enemy. In fact, it's absolutely essential. So the new approach isn't about stopping all fires, it's about managing fire proactively. For decades, we've had this policy that has led to a really dangerous paradox. We tried to stamp out every single fire, but in ecosystems that actually evolved with fire, All this did was allow massive amounts of fuel, dead leaves, branches, undergrowth, to just pile up. So when a fire does inevitably start, it's not a small, healthy ground fire. No, it's a catastrophic inferno that just destroys everything. So the answer is to work with fire, not against it. And this involves a pretty clear three-step proactive approach. First, you strategically reduce that fuel load. This can be done by mechanically thinning out some of the dense undergrowth, and then, and this is the most important part, by using prescribed burns. These are small, controlled, low-intensity fires that are set under safe conditions to mimic the natural cycle and keep the whole forest healthy. So as we bring all this together, it is absolutely critical to remember that building climate-proof landscapes isn't just about the climate. We have to take a holistic approach and tackle all the other stressors that are weakening these ecosystems in the first place. This is what's called a no-regrets strategy, fighting invasive species like lantana, managing grazing sustainably, reducing habitat fragmentation. All of these actions build resilience and make ecosystems healthier, no matter what the exact future climate looks like. They are just smart, essential investments in our natural world. A total win-win. And look, none of this can happen from the top down. This can't just be some technical exercise written in a report. It demands a really deep shift in our policies, in our institutions, and in our culture. It means making resilience the new business as usual and recognizing that local communities aren't obstacles to be managed, but are in fact essential partners in stewarding these landscapes. And that brings us right back to our fundamental choice. As we look at our rapidly changing world, we have to decide what our true goal really is. Are we desperately trying to cling to an idealized past that honestly may no longer be possible? Or are we ready to embrace the challenge of actively building a vibrant, adaptive, and truly resilient future?